Hello, I'm Morgan. First off, I'd like to say thank you to my professor and teaching assistant for providing the class and always being receptive to questions and inquiries that students have had. So thank you, and I hope you enjoy the holiday break. I decided to focus on religion for this project. Before the Renaissance began, Catholicism ruled the land. There was very little separation of church and state because, honestly, the church had become the central government. When the Enlightenment came around, people like Martin Luther and John Calvin and many others opposed the church. Even devout believers like Petrarch denounced most aspects of the church. In this video, I will discuss how I believe through different literary devices, the authors that we reviewed throughout this year oppose and denounce the Catholic Church, specifically the Pope and the practices that occur in the Catholic Church. I will begin by talking about The Prince by Machiavelli. Machiavelli was known for his ruthless and willingness to throw away all morals in order to be able to be a good ruler. Even in our dictionary, Machiavelli is defined as characterized by the political principles and methods of expediency, craftiness, and duplicity set forth in Machiavelli's book, The Prince. Machiavelli's book, The Prince. Crafty, deceitful, etc. If I remember right, in class, we did discuss the fact that he was known as deceitful or immoral or just absolutely a terrible person, but we all seem to agree that simply it wasn't true. In order to be a ruler, I think he was simply aware of the fact that you have to make everyone happy, and that's not possible without bending the rules and tactfully making the right moves. He doesn't seem to think that religion is a necessary aspect of being a good ruler. In fact, it was one of the things he says is just part of a prince's image. It's not really part of his character or something that he needs to be successful. On page 55, in the first full paragraph of The Prince, Machiavelli says, "So you should seem to be compassionate, trustworthy, sympathetic, honest, religious, and indeed be all these things, but at the same time you should be constantly prepared, so that if these become liabilities, you are trained and ready to become their opposites." In this short statement, almost all of Machiavelli's views on religion can be detected. He is aware that religion and being religious is important to the people and for public image. However, he doesn't seem to believe that that is all. Now, no other word but the word trained could have made me think that he did have some stock in religion. If you are to be trained in this sense, that means that to a prince, his religion was true enough to warrant training to have to get rid of it. Even still, he says you must basically be able to throw it away as soon as it begins to retard your activities. If you're able to toss aside your religion at the drop of a hat, is it really a religion? I don't think so. I think basically Machiavelli believes you need no religion to reign a country. And he used the phrase train because he believes that that is all religion is, something that we have been trained to do and say since we were younger. The only positive aspects of religion he seems to recognize are discussed in chapter 11. Here he talks about ecclesiastical states or states that have been established by their long-standing institutions that are rooted in religion. He said there's no need to defend them. There's no need to rule the people because they are ruled by a higher power, which human minds cannot grasp. While he does acknowledge the fact that these lands have a ruler who is secure and happy because of the higher power that rules, he also almost drops it by the wayside, like the land and the people aren't worth governing because they only follow God's rules, further revealing his opinion of the church and religion to the reader. Moving on to another author, I'd like to discuss Giovanni Boccaccio's The Decameron. This large accumulation of tales and moral stories is shared under the premise that 7 people are attempting to escape the plague by leaving the populated areas and spending a week or two out in the country. They spend the majority of their time telling stories in a basilica, which is pretty ironic considering some of the stories that they tell. On the first day, a story is told of a Jew whose Christian friend convinces him to convert to Christianity. He only converts, however, after he goes to the Vatican to see how they run basically their whole religion. And he sees that, and I quote, "Nobody there who was connected with the church seemed to me to display the slightest sign of holiness, piety, chastity, moral rectitude, or any other virtue," and realizes if these people are running the religion and it's becoming more illustrious and more popular, that God must be on their side. On day 3, Philostrato began the day off with a story of nuns who abuse a supposedly deaf and mute man for sex until he's so overwhelmed he tells them he can no longer continue. And then again, on day 9, a story is told by Alyssa about another group of nuns, one who was sleeping with a lover, and the abbess who came to punish her, who was sleeping with a priest the very same night. When the abbess was punishing the young nun, and it was noticed that the abbess herself was wearing the priest's pants on her head, the young woman said, "By the grace of God, Mother Abbess, tie up your bonnet, and then you may say whatever you like to me." The direct insult and satire aimed at the church shows how Boccaccio has very little respect for the church at all. He openly makes fun of the vows nuns make by casting them as deceitful, horny women who can't resist sins of the flesh, and priests who also can't resist. He also openly mocks all those at the Vatican and says that they are such a collection of money grubbers that they were as ready to buy and sell human, that is to say Christian blood, as they were to trade for a profit any kind of divine object. It's obvious by the stories he chose that he doesn't see the need for the church rules or authority, especially when he seems to see the rulers and higher-ups as just a big group of hypocrites. In contrast to Boccaccio's obvious denunciation of the church and all the Catholics who run it, Francisco Petrarch was a firm believer and staunch Catholic. However, even he criticizes the church. On page 60 of our textbook, sonnet number 136, he accuses the church of finding pleasure in evil doing, of being slaves to wine, food, and beds. He says that the devil resides in their chambers and almost threatens them to keep on living the way that they're living so that God can see and punish them. This whole piece is full of rage and hatred. It nearly sets the page on fire when you read it. Petrarch seems furious at the clergy in Avignon, and that isn't all he says about them. When speaking further on the church at Avignon, he says, "But now I'm living in France, in the Babylon of the West. The sun in its travels sees nothing more hideous than this place on the shores of the wild Rhone, which suggests the hellish storms of Cocytus and Acheron. Even a staunch believer is infuriated by the people who are supposed to represent an entire nation, who desecrate everything that they preach. He even dehumanizes them to animals. He calls them seals. He calls them terrible names." All of the authors we've reviewed, whether in sonnet or story or a manual on ruling the world, like Machiavelli, find major faults in the church and how it's run. But are they any different from anything that we see today? Artists and writers that we have today, because of worldwide blogs and free speech and online access to anybody who has allowed for people like Boccaccio and Petrarch and even Machiavelli to talk about the things that drive them crazy or infuriate them. In a way, with our constantly evolving technology, the freedom of ideas and expression that the Renaissance is known for never ended, and most likely will never end. Thank you.